Justin.
Hello.
Excellent. Just perfect timing.
Absolutely.
All right. At that launch 2.5 years ago, Rick Eggers spoke. And Rick is the guy with a nice flowery shirt there. And he's been an environmentalist since he was a kid. And he became a lawyer and was involved with a very big suit. The oil companies were trying to get their insurance companies to pay, I think I got this right, to pay for their cleanup of Superfund sites. And Rick evidently won all these cases against them. So he's now with the Mount Baker group of the Sierra Club, and is active up in Bellingham and Environs up there. Did I just say you're a member of the Sierra Club? Yeah, I think I did. Anyway, so we're glad Rick is still working in retirement. Our other guest in this workshop is Heather Trim, who is the Executive Director of Zero Waste Washington, where her focus is on reducing upstream sources and addressing downstream impacts, getting toxic chemicals out of products, eliminating plastic pollution, and building on the organization's producer responsibility policy initiatives. And with that, they have, I think they put together a dog and pony show.
We have.
Yes. So I was going to ask great questions right off the top, but I think I'll let you guys take it.
Okay, great. Okay, so Rick and I are going to tag team today, and I'll start with just a quick intro of Zero Waste Washington. So we are a statewide nonprofit. Our goal is to make trash obsolete, and we do this primarily by trying to get laws passed, doing research projects and pilot projects. And Rick?
And yeah, I'm the chair of the Mount Baker group of the Washington chapter of Sierra Club. Mount Baker group encompasses San Juan, Skagit, and Whatcom counties. We are very interested in trying to get more involved with what's going on in the San Juan Islands. And I want to thank you all for inviting me here again. Glad to see it transition. Lopez is still running strong. And I just want to clarify one thing about my intro. I didn't exactly win all the cases, but none of my clients lost any cases. We either won or settled. So it's a lawyer's distinction, but I don't want that to show up in print somewhere.
Wonderful. Okay, so today Clarissa asked us to do a PowerPoint, and then we're going to get into discussion. So we're going to do a relatively short for us PowerPoint. Both of us tend to do long ones, and speed us up if you need us to, Clarissa. So we're going to first start with plastics over context, which Rick is going to handle, and then recycling, which I'm going to do, and then talk about policy at the state level, policy at the local level, and then other solutions. So let's turn it over to Rick.
Okay, so yeah, we live in a plastics era. The plastics content of our planet is truly amazing right now. Virtually all of the plastic that has ever been created is still with us. It doesn't degrade down to its component parts. Basically, it might break up into smaller pieces, but it's still there. And as you can see from this graph, the amount of plastic content is growing. Not only grown extremely rapidly, this chart takes us up to 2015, but is growing ever larger and ever faster, even as we speak now, because the plastics industry, which is the oil industry, has dedicated itself to growing faster and faster because they're losing a lot of the market for gasoline. So they're expanding the market in plastics. Next chart. Next slide. There we go. So that speaks for itself. And packaging means primarily the plastic bottles like you see here, and plastic bags that food comes in, meats, all sorts of things. Single-use plastics are really the bane of the plastics problem, because when we used to have plastic bags at the market, which thankfully we don't have to worry about in Washington now, but more or less. But the life, someone did a survey, the length of life of a plastic bag was 12 minutes. Once you got it home, and then that was it. And it went in the trash.
Oh, I see. Okay, this is a animated slide. Go ahead, Rick. Tell me when to click next.
Yeah. So anyways, plastics, I said, have been around a long time. Ironically, when they were first created in 1869, they were based on a cellulose structure. Right now, that's no longer, it's still possible, but it's no longer used because making them from fossil fuels, natural gas and oil derivatives is much cheaper. Next item. The modern plastics age kind of began with World War II, because things like nylon, plexiglass for canopies, lots of other products were vital to the war effort. Next. And by the 1950s, after the war, people were flush, feeling good about themselves, and they were ready to spend. And the plastics manufacturing industry and the diversity of items being manufactured really boomed. And throwaway living became a way of life because it was so convenient. And advertising that throwaway living became really key. Next. This is a photo from a Life magazine, what eventually became a Life magazine cover, about the joys of plastics raining down on us, all these throwaway plastics. It was so nice. You didn't have to worry about cleaning. You didn't have to worry about storage. You just bought plastics, used it, threw it away. What a great lifestyle. Next. In 1953, you see all those companies listed. They created what was called Keep America Beautiful, or KAB. This is a nonprofit that is still with us today. And their mission was to educate and encourage environmental stewardship by the public, not environmental stewardship by the producers, but by the public, that focused on littering, recycling, community beautification, and very powerful ads. Came up with pop culture terms you may remember, like litter, litter bug, every litter bit hurts, and incredibly indelible images created through public service announcements. Next. By 71, when we were beginning to look at Earth Day and things like that, pollution concerns and producer responsibility expectations were beginning to really become a problem for the industry. And this led to the first of perhaps the most brilliant public service ad ever created, which was the Crying Indian. And if I had time, I'd show you the whole image, the whole commercial, but this is, you probably remember this, the Indian paddling out of the beautiful forest into the San Francisco Bay, which at that time, there was a bunch of Indians that had occupied Alcatraz Island at the same time this ad was being filmed. And this Indian finds all of the waste and litter being thrown at him from cars speeding by, and a tear comes down his eye. It's one of the most awarded ads of all time. But next slide, please.
Oops.
Oh, I'll just tell you.
Yeah, just tell the story, yeah.
Go back for one.
Okay.
But it was all a lie. The Indian was an Italian-American actor. It was all basically aimed at getting people to start thinking about how they could fix the problem and avoiding the reality that the problem was the producers creating all of these products that wouldn't go away. Plastics are very hard to destroy because of the strength of the chemical bonds. So let's jump forward to today. And fracking has made plastics incredibly cheap. The fracking process is much easier for the oil company than drilling for oil. It's much harder though on people, on the environment. It's very polluting. It creates problems with tectonic plates and earthquakes, and it is just a really nasty process. But because it is so cheap, it is continued to be used, and using it more and more to create plastics. Next. Okay, so I love this chart because if you talk about the annual emissions from the plastic life cycle, this is from the getting it out of the ground to production and disposal of it, the whole cycle. In 2019, the annual emissions of CO2 or CO2 equivalents was 0.86 gigatons, which is about the equivalent of 189 coal plants. Gigaton is 1 million tons. So almost 1 million tons of that, like 189 500 megawatt coal-fired power plants running full bore. By 2030, that is estimated to go up the equivalent of 295 coal plants. And by 2050, that's estimated to go up to about 615 coal plants, or nearly 3 gigatons. You'll notice that that's a basically 30-year period, and that's essentially a tripling of the amount of gigatons of CO2 being pumped into the atmosphere from the plastics industry. The plastics industry is by 2030 or so is likely to be producing about 15% of the worldwide budget for CO2 emissions, meaning the budget of what we can tolerate as to try to keep under 2 degrees Celsius temperature rise. That is the cutting off point for getting really, really, really nasty climate change effects. Next.
Okay, so I'm going to now,
now.
now I'm going to talk a little bit about the recycling story. So as you all may know, for 2 decades, we were sending all of our waste, or almost all of our waste, to China back in the container ships. And in 2018, they said no. And you can see how the massive amount just of plastic that was going to China from all these different countries, including, you can barely see at the bottom, the 85 other countries in gray, just got cut off. And this is great because A, China wants to clean up their own environment and create their own circular economy. And B, it created a reckoning for us. We had to basically say, okay, what are we going to do about waste reduction and recycling? So what has happened is Washington State has had a very, very good recycling rate. This is the recovery rate, which is almost the same thing. This is showing the increase, and you can see that it peaked in 2011. Then, since 2011, we have been on a downward trend on recycling, and this is a major problem if you're trying to get the stuff to not go to the landfill. We really want to reduce it in the first place, but we don't. If we're going to have stuff that we can't reduce, let's recycle it. At the same time, and this is showing the cost for households of recycling in the UTC regulated areas. These are the Utility and Transportation Commission's area, which is mainly the unincorporated areas of the state. The cost of recycling per household has gone up dramatically, and this is reflected both in the cities and in the rural areas. Just this happens to be the UTC areas shown here. So how have the local governments reacted? Well, they have been, in King County, they reduced the amount of recycled materials collected curbside. Tacoma implemented recycling surcharges. You can see that on the right. In Spokane, they reduced the curbside recycling collection frequency. And in Franklin County, they just simply discontinued curbside recycling. So we have been in a crunch, a recycling crisis, as it were. And in addition, across the state, we have a very, very disparate access to recycling. You can see that your area is just simply grayed out there, which is interesting. But the numbers are very variable. So we don't have universal access across the entire state to curbside recycling. Now, this is our North Star. So for Zero Waste Washington, Ecology every 5 years does a waste characterization report that is very good, very detailed. This is a graph from that report that was published in August, last August, for the year 2020. And it's looking at what is going to our landfill or our incineration. This is not recycling. This is not composting. And you can see that 20% of the load to our landfill is packaging. You can see all the other problems as well, but this is something we have really got to tackle. We should not be sending we should reduce it. But if we have stuff left over, there's no way it should be going to the landfill. Now people say, well, why bother? Just go ahead and landfill it. What's the big deal? And the big deal is, first off, we're trying to conserve the resource, but also it actually is a big deal from a climate change perspective if you can recycle things versus using the virgin material in the first place. So for aluminum, we're talking about bauxite, which are mines that are quite toxic, and they are finite and expensive and have labor issues. And then you can see number 2 on the list is plastics. So plastic, it's cheaper. It's better from an environmental energy saving perspective to recycle plastic than to use the virgin oil and gas. All right, so let's quickly talk about state policy that has happened recently. So we have a coalition called the Plastic Free Washington Coalition, and you can see the leaders of the group across the bottom here. And we have 2 strategies for addressing the plastics crisis and the recycling crisis. One is, let's reduce the use of unnecessary plastics in the first place. So we're not talking about things like your glasses on your face. We're talking about the packaging and other things like that. And then for the things that we're going to recycle, let's build those markets and recycle here in Washington, not ship it across the ocean. So the first big bill in this regard was led by Senator Doss and by Rep. Peterson, and it passed in 2020. It's the reusable bag bill, and this bill went into effect last October 1, 2021. It got delayed by COVID, but it has kicked in, so this should be across the state uniform policy. And the goal is for people to bring their own bag. That is the goal, and there's an 8-cent charge in there to help motivate that. And Ecology has a terrific website with a lot of good graphics and info that you can use if any of your stores or other farmers market, et cetera, are not in compliance with this right now. Everyone should be in compliance with this now. Now, the second big bill in this regard was led by Senator Mona Doss, and then in the House by Rep. Liz Berry, and that is 5022, which passed last year, 2021. And it's a big deal bill. It has these features. So if you start in the bottom left-hand corner, it bans styrofoam. Now these are going to kick in over the next 2 years. So it bans the food service packaging, it bans the coolers, and it bans the packing peanuts. The packing peanuts comes first. Then number 2, if you go to the top left hand here, this went into effect January 1. This is in effect. So if you have any restaurants that are not, or DoorDash or schools or anything that any food business that you see that is not complying, let me know, because it's time now to start to call Ecology and have Ecology send them a letter. This says that the consumer can only get these items if they want them. So that's single-use utensils, straws, condiment packages, and cold beverage lids, that is. Number 3 on the right top is no longer requiring that the symbol for recycling be on plastics. We had a law, and 27 other states had the same law, that you had to have the symbol on there even if something was not recyclable. So we were removing that requirement. And then lastly, the bottom number 4 is to help drive the value in the recycling system. It requires minimum recycled content for beverage, personal care product, cleaning product, all plastics, and then trash bags. So we want to make bottles into new bottles. We want to make personal care, like a shampoo bottle, into a new shampoo bottle. That will help drive value in the recycling system and not have the use of virgin material like oil and gas, or also littering and things like that. Okay, so I'm not going to talk a lot about the EPR bill, the Renew Act, because I'm going to talk about that in the policy roundtable that's going to come up soon, because Clarissa wanted us to focus on local solutions. But we did have a major bill that we introduced this past session. Senator Doss was the lead on that, and Rep. Berry. And this is to have the manufacturers pay for the end of life of your packaging and your printed products. And the reason I'm showing you this slide is to emphasize that these policies have been in place in Europe since the early 1990s. And then all the countries that are colors have some sort of policy either in place or on the way. Whereas you can see the United States is gray. We do not have a nationwide policy on extended producer responsibility, where the manufacturers are responsible for the end of life of the packaging. Maine and Oregon and Colorado, well, Maine and Oregon have passed laws. Colorado just passed it at the legislature and it's on the way to the governor, and California is looking at one. And we want to be in that mix. So here's just a quick summary of the Renew Act, which was SB 5697 in this session that just concluded, and we are definitely bringing it back, so it'll have a new number for next year. The idea is to have the circular economy, which you can see the circular economy image on the left here, and you can see the manufacturers. These are some of the major manufacturers who would be the producers and would have to pay for the end of life recycling, and also the outcomes that we have at the bottom here. Increased reuse and recycling, there'll be targets in there for that. Universal and convenient recycling for all Washington residents across the state. Anywhere where they have garbage pickup would have curbside pickup recycling, and also responsible recycling, looking at where the material is going, making sure the stuff is really getting recycled and redesigning the products. Now let's talk about local policy. I'm going to turn it back over to Rick. Are you on mute?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So Bellingham passed its own plastics bill, went into effect last year, and the focus of it is that so in-house restaurants, sit-down eat restaurants have to use durable goods now. So silverware, hard plastic, rewashable plates or china plates or something like that. Any to-go items, clamshells, wrappings, things like that, they have to be compostable. Not industrially compostable, but compostable, although that term can sometimes run into definitional issues. And then in hotels, no more mini bottles of shampoo or conditioner or lotion that they put on the counter. Now they has to be dispensed from little bottles that are bracketed onto the wall and can be refilled. So, and the Bellingham bag bill has basically been subsumed by the state bag bill that Heather has mentioned, but Bellingham did have a pretty progressive bag bill also of its own before that went statewide. So yeah, we're trying to move towards reusables. And
if I could just add one thing here. So Bainbridge has a similar, so Rick was one of the leaders of the effort up in Bellingham, and we helped, but he and some other local groups were the leaders. The Bainbridge ordinance, which also passed last year, is very similar. The only difference is it says that the compostable to go has to be backyard compostable, because they do not have a commercial compost facility on Bainbridge, so they will take them. So it has to be backyard compostable.
Right, and things like, if you need straws, you can still ask for them. They can be made available, but they're just not going to be thrown in with food you may order. This is the City of Bellingham website. It talks about basically the plastic restrictions, what I've already been discussing, so we can go to the next one.
Okay, so the point of this slide is to show that when we got to a statewide bag bill, we had 39 local ordinances in place. So this is how you can have success at the state level, is if you get to the tipping point where you do have, in this case, bag, and you can see San Juan County was one of them, was in place. And that really helped us get to the tipping point for the state level. So that's why we're talking about how important it is to do local ordinances, in addition to being cutting edge, which hopefully Lopez Island and San Juan County would be able to do. All right, so moving on to things other than policy, but they're all kind of policy related. So let's start with the WRAP program. So the WRAP program is something that the American Chemistry Council has been promoting sort of around the United States. The American Chemistry Council is the lobby group for Exxon and all the petrochemical companies that make plastics and other chemicals, so chemical products. So there's a little bit of skepticism here, but it is true that the film and bags that you have at your home are not recyclable. Please do not send them to the recycle system because they catch on the they get caught on the rollers, and it's very in the recycling facility, and it's very dangerous and time consuming for the workers to cut that film off. So right now, and you can see the date here, March 23rd, 2022, we have a 6-month pilot going on in King County, where they have grocery stores that are making a huge effort for people to bring back the bags and film to the store. And they're doing a lot of, you can see a really nice sign here. They're doing a lot more education. They're going to, at the end, see how effective it's been. Now, I want to point out, this is only for plastic film, where if you punch it with your finger, it actually gives a little bit. If it's crinkly and rigid, like doesn't have any stretch to it, that is a different resin, and that plastic should not go in. But you can put in here bubble wrap, you can put in here Ziploc bags, you know, all different types of plastic film, as long as it has a little give when you put your finger on it.
And just to clarify one thing you said, Heather, plastic film is recyclable, but not curbside. So
Correct. So it should not go to the recycling facilities. These,
right,
sorry, thank you, Rick.
Need
These
to take
get
it to,
bailed up. Yeah, these get bailed up.
You need
Yeah.
to take it to stores that most stores do have it. They don't advertise it as well as this nice sign here, but they do take film. And if you're in doubt about the film, say, I'm not sure if this is the right kind of film that Heather was just describing, just include it anyways, because they'll sort it out. This is the one area of plastic recycling that's actually that they feel like that it's profitable for them to do the recycling, and they really encourage it a lot more than they do the others that aren't as profitable.
Well, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that one thing. Don't put the bad film in there, put it in the landfill if it doesn't have a little give. They do, but Rick is right. They have some level of tolerance for some contamination. They don't sort it out, but it gets bailed up, and then but they do have some degree of tolerance for the wrong plastics in there, more than some of the other systems. But try not to put the bad ones in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's talk about the new Department of Health. I'm sorry, I should have written that out. State Department of Health food safety regulations that just went into effect March 1, so just a few months ago, that lets you now bring your own container to food establishments. So this is the state food safety code. This is the new food related code, which says that the consumer can bring their own consumer owned, that means your own container, to get things like bulk food, like you can see here, as long as it's not ready to eat. In other words, it's not like hot teriyaki. And then if you look at the bottom bullet, if it is food that is ready to eat, the employee of the establishment could fill it for you. Now, this is only the case if the food establishment, the grocery store or the restaurant or whoever, has done a plan, a very simple plan that they've filed with the Department of Health. In other words, a non-contamination plan. The biggest issue with the food safety code is they don't want people contaminating other people's food. And so you need to have a contamination-free way of giving the food, putting the food into your container, which is why they want the gravities. If you look at the photo on the bottom, those are called gravity fill. And so you open up a little lever and the food comes, like say it's lentils, they come flowing out. They will not allow it if it's a scoop, because if you get it with a scoop, you might accidentally touch the side of your container. And then the next consumer, when they come and they use that same scoop, if your container had any germs on it or whatever, as we know, virus, whatever, then they could contaminate their food. So it has to be gravity systems like this. Or if it's a scoop, it has to be a scoop that then gets put into a bowl and a new scoop comes for you to use as the next consumer. Now that was food, this is beverages. So now you will be able to bring your own container for beverages. And the issue with beverages before is the only thing that was allowed before was hot coffee without any milk in it. Because the issue with the food safety, again, is the issue of certain things that have a time limit, like milk and things like that. And that's the issue in terms of the germ and virus and pathogen transfer. So now it is allowed as of March 1, but you must have, the food establishment must have a simple plan filed. It's a fill in the blank plan filed with the Department of Health. All right, so now let's talk about refill stations. I know you all are doing this, and this is like terrific because we got to change the norm on single-use plastic bottles. So we just did a project with the city of Seattle, and we we gave grants to, in this case, religious institutions to put in refill stations. And here are 5 of the 12 that we did. And a lot of these churches in Seattle or other religious institutions are serving the homeless. If you look at the middle photo there, that is Compass Housing Alliance, which is part of a church. And that's where people can come in to do mail service or bank services. And they wanted the refill station, which you can see at the bottom there, right across from that. And when we went in to do the evaluation, we saw a lot of people using it. And sometimes people were filling multiple bottles at the refill station. So this is both an environmental thing, but also a public health and humanitarian thing. Now, another major thing that we really, really, really want you all to do, and we hope others will do too, is to institute reuse systems for the to-go containers in your community. Now, one very simple way to start, and this is an example from from Canada, not British Columbia, but I was there at Jasper. It was near Jasper National Park in Canada. The coffee shop just had this really simple thing. It had mugs. And if you can read it, it says basically return it, keep it, or bring back another one. So it was just a really simple voluntary thing. And I think they washed the mugs in the store. So you can start super simple like this, and then hopefully have a true reuse system where people will take everything from the to-go would all be in reusable things. Now, another thing that we have just started last fall, and we are looking for more people to join this committee, is a statewide online, we meet once a month virtually, and we're trying to convert all of the K through 12 cafeterias to be more sustainable, especially if you look at the bottom photo, going from the single-use plastics to all durables, including, for example, milk machines instead of milk cartons. The milk is actually colder and better. The kids drink it more because it's cold if it comes in a milk dispenser rather than in milk cartons. And obviously other things like reducing organic waste and installing refill stations and doing bulk condiments. So this, if anyone wants to join this committee, we would welcome you. And then we're doing coordinated litter assessments across the state. So if you do a litter assessment and you'd like us to come help you once, it doesn't need to be that frequent, once every few years, we are trying to tabulate what is the litter that's being picked up, what type, how much, and how much it weighs, because under the federal Clean Water Act, so the federal law about water pollution, we want plastic and litter to be considered a pollutant. And you can see where it is, Hawaii, Alaska, California, et cetera. These places have done this, and Washington has not done this. So we are working collaboratively with different groups across the state to try to get a data set going so that we can actually go to the Department of Ecology and say, we want you to regulate litter and plastic as a pollutant under the Clean Water Act. And along the lines of litter, we do have a summit coming up on July 19 and 20. If you're interested, it's going to be online. It's free. And I will put the link in a moment into the chat so you can grab that. That litter is a huge issue, and we can address it both from a policy perspective, but also from other perspectives as well. And then Monday, this is my last slide really. Monday, we have a innovation summit coming up with really cool presentations about a new battery recycling facility that's being proposed for Washington for lithium-ion batteries, the Climate Pledge Arena and their whole journey to becoming zero waste. They are zero waste. And a bunch of other talks, plus we have the finalists of the pitches of the business teams. We're basically trying to get more businesses in Washington State to have a circular economy. And then, always finish with this slide, which is, our goal is to prevent it in the first place. Don't buy it. Just don't buy it in the first place. And bring your own bottle, bring your own bag, then reuse, then recycling. We are very, very opposed. Our dead bodies will go in front of the bulldozers if they try to do incineration facilities or waste energy. And we, of course, don't want it to be disposed. And so here is my contact info and Rick's contact info. We have a quarterly e-newsletter. So if you sign up on our website for our e-newsletter, You'll hear about upcoming legislation. We hate spam, so we only send you 4 e-newsletters and a couple other emails, and Clarissa and Rick can attest to that. And you know, we really want your help at the state legislative, but we really also would love for you all to do something locally. So I will stop sharing now, and I'll put the links to those 2 events in the chat.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add that, you know, if you're a member of Sierra Club, you'll get our monthly newsletter, which I edit and prepare. So I'm always aware of trying to get stuff in there from all over the Mount Baker group. If you don't want to join Sierra Club, but you'd like to get the newsletter, contact me and we can get you on our activist list, and you can still get it that way. And thank you. Questions?
Yeah, Clarissa, how many minutes do we have left? Are we all
Well,
run out?
technically, we're supposed to be meeting in the group,
Uh-oh.
unfortunately. I don't know where the time went because
3
it's-
minutes. You got 3 minutes.
Yeah,
left.
Justin, yeah.
Okay, well, go with, anyone have a quick question or comment?
Great presentation, no question. Really
Thank you.
wonderful.
Right.
We
we
want
get-
you
can we
all to
get-
help be a leader in the state, so
Can-
we're
can we
here
get
to promote
copies
you
of-
all.
Can we get copies of that? Is that possible?
Well, it's
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah, I redid a few slides, so I need to resend it, but I can send a PDF. Yeah.
I do have a question, Heather, and that was how many times can you recycle a bottle made out of plastic?
Sure. So the plastic bottle made out of PET, I think it's 8 times before the actual polymers become degraded. But they don't actually recycle it 100%. What they do is they do add some virgin material. So
Uh-huh.
in a way, it's an infinite system because they're constantly adding in. And what they do also is they make things like carpets and t-shirts and fabric. So that becomes a durable that lasts for a long time.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of a tricky, it used to be kind of a bigger deal, but I think it's less of a big deal now because of the durables that it goes into.
I have a question that I've been wanting to find an answer to for a long time. How come the grocery stores, how come 5022 and a local effort here didn't go to the grocery stores to get rid of styrofoam in the meat department and plastic in the meat department? Did Safeway lobby that?
Yes. Okay, so that's a really, really good question. So when we did the Seattle styrofoam ban back in 2008, meat trays were banned. Styrofoam meat trays were banned. And so in Seattle right now, if you go to the grocery store, you mainly are going to find the compostable trays. The challenge for the grocers is, so yes, the grocery lobbied heavily to not have meat trays included in the state one. And the reason is because they have major supply chain issues getting those meat trays. The compostable ones have to go in a refrigerated rail car. If they go in a hot rail, because they're made mainly in the Midwest, if they come in a hot rail car, they melt. They start to melt in the car. So they've had major problem getting the meat trays. So we, in the state bill, accommodated them. We didn't really want to, but we did because of their supply chain issues for now. So we definitely will come back to that in the future and try to get it passed in the future. But that there is a very real reason why they lobbied to get it out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But won't it be taken care of in 2023?
Well,
Quickly,
no,
you have
meat
10
trays
seconds.
were excluded. Meat trays were excluded.
I see. Okay.
Thank you, Rick and Heather for being here.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
all of our guests being here. Thanks, Larissa from the Lopez Solid Waste. Here we go. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Back in the.